It was a warm summer evening when my friends and I decided to visit a traveling carnival that had set up just outside of town. The bright lights and the sounds of laughter and music filled the air, creating an intoxicating sense of fun and adventure. We bought our tickets and eagerly entered the bustling fairground. We spent the first couple of hours riding rides, playing games, and indulging in funnel cakes. As the night went on, we decided to try out the haunted house attraction. It was one of the main draws of the carnival, advertised as the scariest haunted house in the state. Being a fan of horror, I couldn't resist. My friends, Sarah and Jason, and I got in line, chatting excitedly about what awaited us inside. The facade of the haunted house was impressively creepy, with cobwebs, eerie lighting, and unsettling sound effects. When it was finally our turn, we entered the dimly lit hallway, our laughter turning into nervous giggles. The haunted house was a maze of dark corridors, jump scares, and spooky scenes. We screamed and laughed as actors dressed as monsters and ghosts leaped out at us. About halfway through, we entered a room that was set up like a creepy old circus tent, complete with eerie carnival music playing on a loop. As we navigated through the room, a figure dressed as a clown appeared. His costume was tattered, and his face paint was smeared, giving him a sinister appearance. He moved with an unsettling, jerky gait, and his eyes seemed to follow us with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Welcome to my circus," he croaked, his voice raspy and menacing. We laughed nervously, thinking it was just another actor playing his part. The clown began to follow us, getting uncomfortably close. At first, we tried to brush it off as part of the act, but his persistence became increasingly alarming. "All right, buddy, back off," Jason said, trying to sound casual, but clearly uneasy. The clown didn't respond. Instead, he reached out and grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. Panic surged through me, and I yanked my arm away. "Seriously, this isn't funny," Sarah said, her voice trembling. The clown's grin widened, revealing yellowed teeth. "Why leave so soon? The fun is just beginning," he said, his voice dripping with malice. We bolted for the exit, our hearts pounding in our chests. The clown chased us through the remaining corridors, his footsteps echoing behind us. When we finally burst out of the haunted house, we were breathless and shaken. We reported the incident to the carnival staff, but they seemed dismissive, assuring us that it was just an actor trying to give us a good scare. We decided to leave the carnival early, the fun of the night completely overshadowed by the terrifying encounter. As we walked to the parking lot, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I glanced over my shoulder and saw the clown standing at the edge of the fairground, his eyes fixed on us. I quickly turned away, my heart racing. We got into the car and drove away, the tension in the air palpable. That night, I had trouble sleeping, haunted by the image of the clown's twisted grin and cold, calculating eyes. The next day, I did some research and found out that the carnival had a history of strange incidents and complaints about overly aggressive actors. While nothing conclusive came up, the experience left a lasting impact on me. I'm a 32-year-old male who grew up in a small town where the annual carnival was the highlight of the summer. My friends, Sam and Tyler, and I always looked forward to it. The carnival set up in a large field not far from where we lived, and every year we made sure to be there for the opening night. One summer when we were 14, we decided to take a shortcut through the woods behind our houses to get to the carnival. It was quicker than driving to the busy entrance, and it felt like an adventure. The woods were thick, but we knew the path well from our years of playing and exploring. That evening, we set off as the sun was beginning to set. The carnival lights were already visible through the trees, and we could hear the faint sounds of laughter and music. The excitement in the air was grandeur, and we hurried along the familiar trail. When we arrived, the carnival was in full swing. We bought tickets and spent the next few hours riding the Ferris wheel, playing games, and eating cotton candy. It was everything we had hoped for, and we lost track of time in the midst of all the fun. As the night grew late, we decided it was time to head back. The crowd was thinning out, and the carnival workers were starting to close up the stalls. We retraced our steps, heading back towards the path that led through the woods. The woods were darker now, and the carnival lights behind us cast long, eerie shadows among the trees. We chatted and laughed as we walked, our voices the only sounds in the otherwise silent forest. About halfway through, Sam stopped suddenly. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice tense. Tyler and I stopped and listened. At first there was nothing, but then we heard it. A faint rustling in the underbrush. We shrugged it off, thinking it was just an animal. We continued walking, but the rustling followed us. "Maybe it's just a deer," Tyler said, trying to sound confident. But the rustling grew louder, and soon we could hear footsteps. I glanced back and froze. Standing a few yards behind us was a clown. His costume was dirty and tattered, and his face paint was smeared. He just stood there, watching us, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "Guys, look," I whispered, my heart racing. Sam and Tyler turned around and saw the clown. For a moment, we were all paralyzed with fear. The clown took a step towards us, and that was enough to break the spell. "Run!" Sam shouted, and we took off, sprinting down the path as fast as we could. The clown's footsteps pounded behind us, growing louder and closer. We dodged trees and jumped over roots, adrenaline fueling our flight. My breath was ragged, and my legs felt like they were on fire, but I didn't dare slow down. The path seemed to stretch on forever, and the sounds of the carnival faded into the distance. We finally broke through the edge of the woods, our houses just a few yards away. I risked a glance back and saw the clown standing at the tree line, his figure barely visible in the darkness. He made no move to follow us further, but simply stood there, watching. We burst into Sam's house, breathless and terrified. His parents looked up, alarmed by our sudden entrance. "What happened?" Sam's dad asked, concern etched on his face. "A clown, in the woods. He chased us." I managed to gasp out between breaths. Sam's dad grabbed a flashlight and went outside to look, but the clown was gone. The police were called, and they searched the area but found no sign of him. We were told it was probably just a prank, but the fear we felt was very real. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. The image of the clown's sinister grin burned into my mind. The woods, once a place of adventure and fun, now felt ominous and threatening. We never took the shortcut through the woods to the carnival again. I'm now 40 years old, but this story takes place when I was 10 years old. When the circus came to our small town, it was a big event, and everyone was excited. My parents decided to take me to the opening night. The circus was set up in a large field at the edge of the town, with colorful tents and flashing lights drawing everyone in. As soon as we arrived, I was entranced. The smell of popcorn and cotton candy filled the air, and the sounds of laughter and music were everywhere. We watched the performances with wide-eyed wonder. Trapeze artists flying through the air, daring fire breathers, and majestic animals performing tricks. But what caught my attention the most were the clowns. Unlike many kids, I was never afraid of clowns. I found them fascinating with their bright costumes and exaggerated makeup. One clown in particular stood out to me. He was tall, with a bright red nose, exaggerated makeup, and a big, toothy grin. He seemed to be everywhere, always at the edge of my vision, his eyes following me. At first, I thought it was all part of the act. After all, clowns were supposed to be funny and a bit mysterious. During intermission, my parents gave me some money to buy snacks. As I was waiting in line, the same clown approached me. He crouched down to my level, his smile widening. "Hello there, young man," he said in a cheerful but slightly unsettling voice. "Are you enjoying the circus?" I nodded, a bit starstruck by the attention. "Yeah, it's amazing." He chuckled. "I'm glad to hear that. You know, I have something special just for you. How would you like to pet one of the elephants?" My eyes widened with excitement. "Really? Can I?" "Of course," he replied, standing up and gesturing for me to follow him. "It's just behind the big tent. Come on, it'll be fun." I hesitated for a moment, looking around for my parents. They were still seated, engrossed in conversation. My excitement got the better of me, and I decided to follow the clown. He led me behind the main tent to a smaller, dimly lit area. The festive sounds of the circus grew faint as we moved further away. My excitement began to wane, replaced by a growing sense of unease. The clown stopped in front of a small trailer and opened the door. "After you," he said with that same wide grin. I stepped inside, expecting to see elephants or animal handlers. Instead, the trailer was dark and empty. Panic started to set in. I turned to leave, but the clown blocked the doorway, his smile now looking sinister. "Where are you going, kid?" "The fun's just starting," he said, his voice now cold and menacing. I felt a surge of fear and bolted past him, ducking under his arm and running as fast as I could. I didn't look back until I reached the main tent, where I finally felt safe among the crowd. I spotted my parents and ran to them, tears streaming down my face. "What's wrong, David?" my mom asked, concern etched on her face. I could barely speak, but I managed to say, "The clown. He tried to take me." My parents' faces paled. My dad stood up immediately and went to find security. They searched the area but found no trace of the clown. The trailer I had described was gone, as if it had never been there. The rest of the night was a blur. My parents kept me close, and we left the circus early. I never saw that clown again, but the memory of his sinister grin and the dark trailer stayed with me. Thanks so much for listening to Nightmare Narratives. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be reminded when we post a new video every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central Time. If you have a story you'd like to hear read on the channel, email it to us at officialnightmarenarratives@gmail.com, and you might just hear your story featured in a future episode. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.